We are good to go. So again, my name is Nicole Smith. I am the event and communications coordinator at Spark. So happy to have you join us. We still have new people joining us, so that's great. But we are very excited with today's webinar because we have Carmine Mastropierro from from Commerce.
Commerce.
Sorry, I'm supposed to content. You have way too many
It's okay.
for me.
Right.
I apologize. We have his website up on the chat. For those of you who are just joining us, very quickly, we have put everybody on mute to cut back on the ambient noises while Carmine is presenting. You will be able to ask questions. We will have a Q&A. If you do have a question that is burning on the inside, feel free to write it in the chat box, which is found at the bottom of your screen. If you want to let us know who you are and where you're from, please go ahead and write that in the chat box. It's always fun to know where people are from. And without further ado, I am going to hand this over to Carmine and let him do what he does best. So take it away.
Awesome, Nicole. Thank you for the intro.
You're welcome.
And thanks to Spark Niagara, Ryerson Innovation Hub for letting me do this. They were nice enough to allow me to do a nice webinar today. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks to everyone that's also joining us today. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So just in case you aren't familiar with me, I want to talk a little bit about myself. So my name's Carmen. I'm the founder of Mastro Commerce, which is a copywriting agency here in Niagara Falls. And I primarily help companies generate traffic, revenue, and leads through different services like content writing, copywriting, and also SEO and different marketing services. Now, I normally work with 7 to 8 figure B2B companies, primarily software ones, but I've also dabbled in health, fitness, and a couple different niches. But mostly these days, I'm working with the software startups. And I've been also starting online businesses and freelancing for about 8 years. So I just want to give you a bit of a background of myself and my experience in business. But most importantly, this is some of the work I've done, Neil Patel, GoDaddy, Marketo, just to give you a bit more background of who I've worked with. You can see my full portfolio on my website there. And GQ and Forbes, Postmates are a couple notable ones. And then I want to give a little background of what we're going to be looking at today. So the first thing is we'll just touch on what content writing is, the difference between content and copy, because it's good to know the difference. And then I'm going to talk about what separates average content versus very good content, because there's a big difference. And you don't want to write average content because these blend into the rest of the market. Then I'm going to talk about how to write content for SEO or search engine optimization, and that's going to help you rank higher in Google. Then I'm going to get on to how to write content that generates leads, because it's great to have content, but it should be doing something for your business. So I'll be getting into lead generation funnels and things like that. And then I'll be going into content writing examples, because I think it's one of the best ways to learn, which is looking at successful businesses and then mimicking what they do. After that, I want to show you a content writing process that I use myself to write up to a couple thousand words an hour really fast. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to give you some free resources that will 10x your writing and marketing abilities. So to jump right into it, what is content writing? So content writing is the process of writing web content for a particular business goal. Now this can be driving organic traffic to a website, generating inbound leads, or establishing yourself as a go-to resource in your industry. Now you can actually achieve all of these things with the strategies I'll be showing you today. But some examples of what content would be, and we interact with these all the time, they'd be blog posts, case studies, checklists and cheat sheets, white papers, and ebooks. Now, I also want to talk about how content differs from sales copy, because they're so similar. And I offer both of these to my clients and always have to explain what makes them different. So you can think of content as educational and informative. So while sales copy focuses more on the selling and advertising side, so sales copy might be located very close to the point of sale. So think maybe like a direct mail letter you'd get in your mailbox, a billboard, a sales page, a sales letter. When you're writing material for that, that's sales copy. Today, though, we're going to focus on web content, which is going to be typically found on websites, social media, or even print publications, although their strategies and processes tend to intermix, and they're very similar. Now, just here on the right, this is a pretty good example of an ad that David Ogilvy wrote for Rolls-Royce. And you can see that it is sales copy driven, because it's advertising the car itself, and that it is just promoting the product, the features, the pricing, and everything like that. So now I want to talk about what exactly separates the average content versus the great content. So right now there's approximately 600 million blogs on the internet, and there's about 1.7 billion websites. So you have to stand out. You need to write really good content to do that. Now this over here is Ann Handey. She's actually the chief content officer over at marketingprops.com. And she wrote a book called Everybody Writes, and I recommend that everyone reads it. It's amazing. And it primarily focuses on the idea that you need to be using empathy, utility, and inspiration to make the best content. Now, this is doable in many different ways. I want to dive into each one of these right now, with the first one being empathy. So empathy really is just putting yourself in the reader's shoes and thinking about what problem are they experiencing, because if they're reading your content, they probably want to learn something and get over a little pain point or hiccup they're experiencing. And then the second would be emotions, because they're definitely going to be experiencing some kind of emotions based on those problems. And then they're going to have some kind of goal. This can be to learn a certain strategy, compare certain products, and then you want your content to help them achieve that goal. And then also you need to think about demographics in terms of location, income, education. It's very important, but also what's more important is their psychographics. So in that case, we want to think about are things like their beliefs, their values, and the feelings. And now what this allows you to do is what Seth Godin would call is find your 1,000 true fans. So it's just a very small segment that really resonates with your content, your brand, your product, and they end up becoming a kind of like a brand ambassador. And Seth Godin's an amazing marketer, and I think he nails it because you don't want to just reach everybody. You want to find that small little segment that really loves your content, and then you can delight them when you know all this information. But naturally, you're probably going to think, how can you find this information? So the first way would be to do primary research. So this is when you actually go out, conduct your own research, get your own data. And the first way to do that is to use something like Google Forms. So Google Forms is a free tool. You can use it to create questionnaires. And what that allows you to do is ask questions to your readers, like what content do you like? What content do you like that we previously published? What can you learn about, or what are you interested in learning about right now? And then you can send that out to your email list, social media, wherever possible. And then all in all, that allows you to collect feedback directly from your readers because they know best. And then you can also use something like Google Analytics. This is another free tool from Google. And you connect it to your website. It will give you all your website data, such as the user demographics, the behavioral information of what pages they're visiting, all of your traffic sources, everything you need to know about your website and who's on your website, you'll get from Google Analytics. And then that lets you understand exactly who's on your website and how to write content to please them. But maybe you don't have a really big website, maybe you don't have a big following, and in that case, you need to do secondary research. So this is where you take existing data and you use it to make your own conclusions. So one thing you can do is actually go to competitor reviews, because it's literally just a customer talking about their experience with a business, what they liked, what they didn't like, things of that nature. And then you can actually use that to just better understand your readership. And then similarly, you can go over to social media and look for other competitors, go to their list of followers, and then go through all these people, or as many as you like, and think about how they speak, how they interact with other brands, who they are in terms of demographics, their interests, and note all those down, because it allows you to create a buyer persona, or you can actually make it into just a spreadsheet or a Google Doc, keep it really simple if you want. And then the third thing I would do is actually go download free market and industry reports. You don't have to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars. Many of them are free online. And these will talk about consumer behavior, trends, opportunities, threats, and things of that nature in any industry. So here's just an example of a real estate market report I found. So it can literally be on any market. And then the fourth way would be reading case studies. So that's where a business shows how they helped another business achieve XY results. And then also white papers, which are academic content. So if you do have the following and the data to do the primary research, definitely do that first. But if not, you can always do the secondary research as well. So once you understand who your readers are and you can practice that empathy, now it's time to make your content really practical, because I really believe that a reader shouldn't have to leave your website to learn more. You should cover the topic as much as you can and help them take action right away. And one of the ways you can do this is actually by offering screenshots and step-by-step instructions. So this was an article I wrote for Neil Patel on how to conduct a social media audit. So you can see that I pulled up different images to help them use Google Drive, showed them exactly where to click, what to do. And this just makes your content a lot more actionable. It instantly stands out. And then what you can also do is just use something like Windows or Mac's built-in snipping tool. And it's all built into most OS. You can actually just use that, screenshot everything you're doing, put it in your content, and instantly your readers know what to do, and it's way more actionable. Now, I'd also recommend you might pick up the Google Chrome extension Evernote. When I was writing for Neil Patel, that was a needed Chrome extension because it allows you to screenshot, but also add arrows and blur out certain information, add text, and makes your screenshots really, really cool and interactive. But make sure you're doing that, especially if you're talking about a specific software or something, always add those steps in there. So similarly, you also want to back up everything you talk about with data. So this helps you actually just establish authority and credibility because you're not just making a claim and claiming it as truth, you actually have something to back it up. So continuing off that article I wrote for Neil Patel, you can see that I talked about in this section on auditing your Instagram account, that Instagram has 700 million users, 70% of US businesses are using it. So I'm not just claiming it's a great platform, I'm actually showing people that what I'm saying is true. And you can actually do this very instantly, very quickly, by simply just Googling something like Instagram stats, digital marketing stats, whatever your topic is. Just follow that up on Google with stats or data, and then you'll find tons of resources that you can reference. And then similarly, the third thing you can do to make your content have more utility is using really good visuals, because you don't want to just load it up with stock photos, which don't really add any real value. Instead, what you want to do is put in graphs and charts and really value providing graphics. So once again, that Neil Patel article, I added this graphic from Goldman Sachs that was relevant to the topic. And it's much better than just a stock photo. It actually adds a lot more information for the readers. And also visuals are nice because they act as a bit of visual relief. You know, a blog post, let's say, isn't supposed to look like a newspaper. It should have actually a lot of images and visuals, not just blocks of text and blocks of text after again and again. Now you can actually use something like canva.com completely for free. It's a really good graphics design tool. You sign up for an account, you click create a design, you choose infographic, ebook cover, logo, blog banner, anything you want. You choose from one of their other templates, you add in your own text, different information like that, and suddenly you have a really professional looking graphic for whatever you need, literally in minutes. So after you've discovered who your readers are, you've actually given them tons of actionable content, kind of the cherry on top would be giving them some more inspiration with real life examples, case studies, and extra ideas. And one of the first ways you can do this is actually just give them real world examples of what you're talking about. So this was an article I wrote for Social Media Examiner. I'm not sure if anyone reads them. They're one of the biggest social media websites right now. And this piece was on Instagram copywriting. So what I did is under every header where I talked about a different strategy, I showed them an actual Instagram ad that was using that strategy firsthand. So in this section, I was talking about that using branded hashtags are really good. So I actually went on my phone, found Audi Canada's ad using the branded hashtags, screenshotted it, and used it in the article. It's really as simple as that. But suddenly now the readers know what to do. They have a bit more inspiration, and it just clarifies topics and whatever you might be reading about. So try to include as much real life examples just to back those things up. And then similarly, you have case studies. So I've mentioned these before, but case studies essentially just show readers what you're talking about has real potential and merit. Now, I like using it also to display the kind of results people can get in terms of revenue, traffic, things like that. And this was an article I wrote on my personal blog on startup marketing case studies. And I wanted to show people that if you make a really good product, that often can go viral and do all your marketing. You might have to spend $0 on advertising. So I use Slack, the collaboration tool. In case you don't know, Slack is a communication tool you can use to conference and share files, things like that. And they actually went viral with very little marketing just by making a great product. People used it and they shared it. And they actually have over 12 million people a day use it. So I mentioned that, and that they're expected to earn about 4.2 billion by 2025. And then I included a nice video from the digital marketer Eric Zhu on him elaborating on that. So once again, it just gives people a bit of an expectation of whatever strategy you're talking about and the results they're going to get from it. All right, so next up is SEO. So I think that if you're writing content, there's no excuse not to optimize it for search engines because it's literally free traffic, free leads, and free authority. It's got to put a bit of work in at first, and then it greatly pays off. So some things to consider is that 93% of all online experiences begin with a search engine. So If you think about yourself, I know myself included, if I come up with something, I'm probably going to go to Google, look it up, and try to find an answer. And it's the first thing a lot of us do. And then also 75% never go past page 2. So you need really good SEO to land on the first page. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get any traffic from it. And then on top of that, 70 to 80% are actually completely ignoring paid ads these days. Even if you think about if you're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you're constantly coming across ads and you're probably just skipping them or scrolling past. So it's never been more important to actually focus on your organic SEO. And SEO means search engine optimization. Is the process of optimizing your content for the search engines so it ranks higher and it drives more traffic. And there's two parts to SEO: on page, which is what we're focusing on today because it's optimizing the individual pages. But then off page is also good because that's building links, brand monitoring, and essentially just boosting your SEO off of your website. But just because we're focusing on content today, let's talk a bit more about on page. So on-page SEO really begins with researching good keywords. Now, these are just words and phrases you use within content they want to rank for. So if you wanted to rank for marketing, that'd be one of your keywords. Now, ideally, you'd have one main keyword in a piece of content, and you would also have several secondary keywords you want to target, and even keyword variations. So it might be marketing plan or marketing strategy, not just marketing. And I'd recommend use a free tool like Uber Suggest. This is a tool from Neil Patel, ubersuggest.com. It's in chat right now. And if you just type in a keyword and you hit the search button, it'll bring you to a page like this. So it'll give you the keyword ideas. It'll also show you the trend. So if it's searched more, maybe in certain months than others, it'll give you some insight into that. The monthly search volume, the search difficulty, and there's some other data there, but we're just looking at those main metrics. So ideally what you want to do is find a keyword that has high search volume, so people are looking for it a lot on Google, but there's not a lot of difficulty. And you can use that search difficulty metric there on the right if you like. But one of the best things you can do too is actually just type the keyword directly into Google and look who's on the first page. If you see people like Neil Patel or WebMD, these massive websites, unless you have a website that's of similar size, you might not be able to compete against them. So you want to look for websites and keywords that are of equal status to yours. And then we also need to think about is the intent behind every keyword. So let's say someone was targeting or looking up marketing plan. Well, odds are they'd probably be looking how to make a marketing plan. They might want to see marketing plan examples, and you want to make sure that your content serves that intent because it pleases them, and that's what Google's looking for. They want content that's actually very useful and serves that search intent. And then also when you look for long tail keywords, so these are keywords that have 3 words or more, and a longer keyword just is going to have less competition and it'll be easier to rank for. So if you're a newer website or you have less authority, I'd recommend looking for those longer keywords because you can use those, get some very quick wins in terms of your SEO. And then as your trust grows in Google, you can start going for these more competitive ones. And then also you need to consider that there's a few different types of keywords. They're not all the same. So the first would be informational. So if someone's looking to learn something like how to write content, they'd probably find something like this here on the right, where the article would actually show them step by step how to write the content. Now there's also transactional, which is a query where someone's looking to buy something. So if someone typed in affordable sales software, they would see something like this from G2, where it actually lists all of the different softwares they recommend, the ratings, and the prices. And then there's navigational, which is where people are looking for a certain brand. So for example, if you typed in Zendesk and how to forward an email, there's actually an article from Zendesk where they target their own company name because they want people who are customers to find them. But also if you typed in something like Nike or Adidas, that's technically a branded keyword as well. And then naturally, once you have those keywords, you're probably going to think, where do I put them? And there's some main areas that you do want to place them, with the first place being the URL, the title tag, and the meta description. Now, if you're not an SEO wizard, it's okay. You can be on Wix, WordPress, Weebly, and they all make this really, really easy. If you are on WordPress, though, I'd recommend you download the Yoast SEO plugin. Makes all this super simple. But any kind of major CMS will have a lot of this built into it, and you should be able to easily optimize the metadata. So if you typed in beginner's guide to SEO in Google, this would be one of the first things you see. And you can see that Moz puts the main keyword directly in the URL. It's very clean. Both the users and the search engines can easily interpret that. And then as well, it's in the title of the article. So once again, search engines and the readers can interpret that nicely. And that's also in the meta description, which is the text that's below the search listing. Now, something to consider is that optimizing your meta description with a keyword doesn't actually directly affect SEO, it's actually indirect. So you can see that certain keywords get bolded when they get typed in. So if you use the keyword in the meta description, it gets bolded, more people will click it, and because Google loves user experience and they see more people clicking your listing, they'll boost it up, the rankings. And then also you want to use your keywords in header tags. So header tags are those big bolded words and phrases that separate pieces of content on a page. And typically there's H1, H2, H3, etc. Once again, if you're on WordPress or one of those websites, it makes it really easy to add those. And then just make sure that in some of the headings, not all of them, don't stuff it or make it unnatural, but include your keywords there. And also sprinkle them throughout the body once or twice again. Once again, just make it natural though, don't stuff it. And then a bit more advanced would be putting your keywords in the alt text and file name. So let's say that you uploaded an image or a video. Just make sure before you do that, you just right click, you rename the file to something that makes sense, preferably a main keyword. And then the alt text is if you've ever been to a website and you hovered over an image or it didn't load and that text pops up, that's alt text. And it's for that purpose. And it's also for people who are visually impaired. They have software that will read them the alt text and help them understand what's on a page. And Google's looking at all these tiny details, and you can think of them all as little wins. And if you optimize them, you're going to rank higher on Google. Now, also with SEO and content, word count's a really, really big factor. Backlinko.com did a study where they analyzed over 1 million search results, and they actually found the #1 result to be roughly 1,890 words long. And yeah, exactly, Evan. He commented in the chat, he said it's about balancing writing for people and for Google, and that's exactly it. You want to write for both people because that's what Google wants at the end of the day. So if you understand what Google wants, which is the best user experience, and you do that, you're going to get rewarded. Now, long form content makes a lot of sense in terms of it ranking higher because it actually just provides way more value, information, resources, you name it. And it also just gives you more chances to rank because you have more words in there, which means more keywords. And just stay tuned because I'll also be showing you my own writing process to write long form content really easy. But just know right now in the current state, long form content is the way to go if you want to rank highly. Now, also very similar to all the other things we've been talking about with SEO, formatting is really important. Content needs to be easy to read, easily digestible, or what happens is you tend to get a low bounce rate, or rather a high bounce rate. People are coming to the website and leaving. People aren't spending a long time on page. And once again, if you use Google Analytics, you can actually see these metrics tracked every single day. And if you have a very low average time on page and a very high bounce rate, it'll be something to audit. And something really interesting was that the market research company, the Nielsen Group, found that people are only reading about 20% of content on a given page. So if you think about that, people are scrolling through, they're just looking for that one piece of information they're after. And if your content isn't formatted, people aren't going to find that, and they're going to leave and find another good piece of content. Now, you can easily get around this, improve the user experience, boost your SEO by simply just formatting your content with shorter sentences and paragraphs because it makes it easier to read, using those header tags I talked about, using the visuals, the images as relief and to break up text, use lists and bullet points to cover any steps or some quick information. And you might also want to consider optimizing font size and typography. You'll even notice on this presentation right now, I'm using something called a flat font, and it just doesn't have all the extra little designs and elements on the individual letters, making it easy on the eye. So if you do all these things, suddenly you have this piece of content that's just really easy to read A to Z. So with SEO out of the way, you now know some of the fundamentals of getting your content ranking on Google and pleasing users. So now let's talk about how to actually generate some leads. Let's get some customers and clients. This is actually the main way I've grown my agency and I've landed huge clients is all through content and lead gen. So I want to lead you through kind of the basics of exactly how this happens. And it actually just begins with understanding the basic funnel. Now that begins with the top of the funnel. This is where you're going to attract the widest amount of users possible. And you're going to do this with guides, ebooks, blog posts, and more general content. And then that's going to bring us to the middle of the funnel where we're trying to essentially narrow down and segment the higher quality users. And you actually do that with lead magnets. I'll be talking about these a bit more, but a lead magnet essentially is a free resource you offer in exchange for someone's information like an email, because then you can start contacting them later. But if they're willing to give you their information, they're clearly more serious about your product, your service, and your industry. And then of course you have the bottom of the funnel, which is where you're going to give people like free trials, consultations. You're going to give them demos, audits, and because they're the most serious about your service and product and the content, and they're going to be the most likely to convert. Now, outside of the funnel, it's also really important to understand the buyer journey. It goes hand in hand. So the first stage is the awareness stage. This is where someone starts to realize they have a certain problem that needs to get fixed. And they're typically going to start looking for solutions, reading those top of the funnel pieces of content like blog posts. Even outside of written content, YouTube videos and podcasts do amazing right now because once again, they just get that giant audience in. And then there's a consideration stage. So now the consumer's done his research, he knows some of his options and he's actually just trying to figure out what's the best. And you might do comparison articles at this point or reviews. And then you have the decision stage. So at this point, they have their credit card out, they're ready to do something. And that's why the consultations, the free audits, free demos are so good because those people are ready to convert. Now, also to really get the most out of lead gen with your content, you need to have that buyer persona. And I was talking earlier about how to figure out who your main user is, your main reader. And if you do everything in terms of that primary and secondary research, you're going to know exactly who's on your website, and you can form it into something like this. And once again, you can use canva.com or just keep it really simple, put it in a spreadsheet or a Google Doc. But you want to just map out your ideal clients' strengths, weaknesses, the questions they have, their goals, their demographics, and then you can even interview and audit your existing customer base as you get more and more to form something like this. And you're gonna be able to actually create content that solves all these problems and gets them in your funnel. Now I mentioned lead magnets, so you really need these if you wanna be generating leads. Now you can convert off of cold traffic, which is where you just publish the content and people will contact you. That definitely happens a lot, but if you want the best results, you need these magnets that draw people in. So this is HubSpot.com, one of the leading marketing companies right now. And what you'll notice in every single piece of content, they have several of these lead magnets. So this one says the marketer's guide to mobile. And if you click download now, it would take you to a separate landing page where you put in your information. And then what that allows them to do is just keep touch with you, upsell their products and services. And you want to do that continually in every piece of content. Now you can actually optimize this, and let's say that you had a lot of content on search engine optimization. You could make a single lead magnet and put it in every single article instead of making a brand new lead magnet. So just be a smarter way to work. But just make sure you're offering something for free and getting their information in every piece of content. And then naturally, that's going to bring us to creating an email sequence. So everyone does their funnels a bit differently. I personally love email because it can be completely automated, hands off. You can kick your feet up and be generating customers. And this would be just a general kind of simple example of what the campaign might look like. So you would have that first opt-in. So someone downloads that lead magnet, they give you their information, and then you give them a welcome email. And you might drip some content. If you have a lot of content on your website, you might link to the best performing one. And then the follow-up might be a second piece of content. And then after that, you would actually pitch your product or service. In general, you typically only want to be promotional every fourth email. So that means every first, second, and third email is more value and content driven because you build that trust and you respect their inbox. But then on that fourth email, you actually promote your product or service, and that's what's going to get you the real conversions and leads. Now, there's tons of tools you can use like HubSpot. I like MailChimp. Aweber's good, SendGrid, and all these allow you to create forms on your website and then collect those subscribers and create these automated campaigns that pretty much run themselves. So I think one of the best ways to learn as well is just to look at other successful companies and other successful writers and mimic what they do. So I just want to look at some examples and case studies that I found that I thought would be really insightful and that would also show off some of the things I've been talking about today. So the first one is Morpheo AI. This is actually an AI marketing company out of Toronto, so not too far from us here in Niagara. And I noticed that in each one of their blog posts, they have this really cool banner ad. And it promotes this report they have. And if you click download report, it takes you to a landing page. And then you can opt in with your information, and then they market to you in the back end. And now this is also really important because the average bounce rate for a website, so how many people will visit a website and leave, is about 70 to 90%. So that means a big majority of people are going to come to your website and leave. So you don't want them to fall through the crack. You're missing out on a lot of opportunities if you aren't collecting their info. And that's exactly what the report does. And it also helps them establish a bit of authority, thought leadership, because they can explain their industry and what's going on with this report. And then secondly, what they do, I noticed, is at the very end, they have this other call to action to try their software for free. So what's cool about this, if they have the report, so someone who isn't ready to convert just yet, they'll download the report, they'll enjoy that. But someone that is ready to try the software will click that button instead. And it just allows them to maximize conversions with all their different buyer personas. Because remember, you might not have just one type of user on your website. As you begin developing those buyer personas and understanding who is interacting with you, you can actually start doing something like this where you start tailoring it to multiple people. And another Toronto company that I thought was really cool is wisemedia.ca. They are a web design and digital marketing agency. And as soon as you land on their page, I really like this. So they ask, will your business make the digital plunge? And I think that's really important right now with a lot of companies not being able to actually physically meet their clients. So they're asking something the customer is already thinking about. So that lets the customer know that they're in the right spot and that they found a service provider that understands them. Now, next, they use a lot of emotion and urgency in the text below that by saying that clients have to change and adapt if they don't want to fall behind. And then there's a perfect call to action right below there. So you can actually mimic this too by whether it's in the headline of content or it's actually in the body, anywhere else, ask questions the customers are thinking or ones that actually resonate with them to get their attention and engagement. And then try to use emotional power words or touch on what they're thinking emotionally once again to get their engagement. And then always use call to actions to make them take action on your website. Now, continuing on Wise Media, what's really cool is if you go down the page, they talk about not only the features of their services, but the benefits. And this is one of the main errors I see in a lot of clients is that they only talk about the features of a product or service. So for example, they have chatbots or they set up chatbots for their clients. And what, that's great and all, but actually what it does is it answers customers' questions. It helps them book more appointments. Same with the video meeting integrations. They can set up the tech and ensure that any client is able to make the best impression. So once again, they're not just talking about the features, they're also clearly explaining the benefits, and that can be financial benefits, health benefits, anything related to that. And then here's Matthew Woodward. He's an old digital marketer. He's been around for a good 10 years, and I think he's probably one of the best writers on the internet next to Neil Patel. And he does a lot of things that I was talking about earlier. So one would be the short sentences and paragraphs. You'll notice that he very rarely goes beyond 2 sentences or 2 lines. Everything's 1 line. Makes it really easy to read, really casual. And he also throws in a lot of different colors and whatnot. You can see that he highlights some text if he wants it to stand out. He uses some emojis to amplify what he's saying. And he also bolds certain words if he wants those to stand out. And then if you're on WordPress, you can actually download a table of contents plugin. And if you click that, it'll actually show everything they're going to learn in the article, which is pretty cool. And then they can jump to whatever section they want. And then you can see here, that's exactly what he has below that, is a nice little overview of what everyone's going to learn. And it respects the reader's time because then they're not going to jump into the article, read it, and figure out it wasn't for them. Instead, they get this nice overview. And if it is for them, they can continue reading and everything's good. And they can also skip directly to where they want. You'll also notice that the links are this pink color, which contrasts with the page, makes it really good for the user experience. They can click anything and navigation becomes really easy. Now, you also notice that he speaks in first person. I've built this list, etc., etc. And he just makes it really casual. It almost sounds like a friend speaking to a friend. I think it's one of the best writing styles right now because it creates that connection with the reader. So I mentioned Backlinko with their study earlier. Now, Brian Dean is the founder of Backlinko, and he has an amazing SEO blog. This is one of his posts on technical SEO. And right at the post, you have a nice quick summary. Once again, you notice it has that nice bright orange, the white text with contrast, a nice little fun graphic to add that entertainment. And it just sums up the article and what everyone's going to read. You also notice that there's some social sharing buttons, which helps the content go viral and get more engagement. Once again, if you're on WordPress, Weebly, any of those platforms, you can enable social buttons really easy or download a plugin. And if you scroll down, you essentially get another form of table of contents and these cool little graphics that actually support the text and all of the chapters. And now this individual piece of content, I want to say it's about 10,000 words long or so. And this is what we call a pillar content, which is a huge piece of content that just covers everything you need to know. Once again, I was talking about earlier how you want to write a piece of content where it teaches the reader everything they need to know about a subject so they don't need to go anywhere else. And then you just become that go-to resource. And that's exactly what Brian Dean from Backlinko did here. And then if you scroll down into the article, you see that he uses a lot of visuals to explain certain things. So here he was explaining search engine spiders, and obviously that's a more complex thing. So he uses this nice little graphic just to explain how the actual process works. And once again, you'll notice he has that short, simple writing style. It's personable, it's in first person, it makes it really easy to read. And then last but not least, you can see that Brian makes his content really practical. He doesn't just say, hey, you should probably improve your technical SEO, because that probably wouldn't help too much. He actually goes and says, these are exact things they need to fix: JavaScript, URL, thin content, duplicate content, some of the things I was talking about earlier. And once again, it just makes it so practical and useful, and you don't need to go anywhere else to learn about technical SEO. All right, so with all of that done, now I want to share with you a writing process that I use myself to write up to a couple thousand words or more per hour. It's going to save you a lot of headaches, a lot of time, and it's also going to help you just write better content in a shorter window. And now that all begins with making an outline. I wish I would have learned this years and years ago, because it saves me so much time every single day. And an outline literally is just what you think it is. It just outlines the intro, the conclusion, any major points, subpoints, references you're going to use in the content. And what's good about this is when you go to actually write, you know what you're writing ahead of time, and you can just write it. You don't have to sit there staring at a white screen or that blinking cursor. You know exactly what you're writing, and it heavily speeds up the process. Now, this is a fictional article on paleo and weight loss from Blogging X, and it's just a good example. There's the overview, the intro, they mapped out the conclusion and the 5 major points they want to cover, and even how many words they want to write in each section. And once again, they can go write this article and they know exactly what they're doing. They could also go find all the data and stats they want to use and keep those in separate tabs. And suddenly you're writing way more efficient and way faster. And also Ann Handey is popping up again. This is her book. Once again, Everybody Writes. I highly recommend you read it. It's really amazing. And she uses this term called the ugly first draft. And this is because many of us try to write, edit, and proofread all at once, and really just slows down the process, and it can just really slow you down in the long term and reduce the quality of content, because writing, editing, and proofreading are completely different processes. They require different skills and things. So the first thing you need to do is just write a really ugly first draft. Don't care about making it perfect. There's going to be errors and mistakes, and things might not look too good. That's the whole point. It's a first draft, and then you're going to take a rest and edit it later. Now, why this works actually is because the different parts of the brain handle different things. So if you're stopping to analyze every single word and whatnot, you're using the analytical or the left side of your brain, which is focusing on order and detail. And that's good. We're going to use that later. But instead, we want to use the creative side of our brain, which is the right. And when you write really fast and you just don't care too much about the errors and whatnot, suddenly you're going to realize that your writing is a lot more creative and inspirational and fun. But that naturally brings us to the time to edit. And now you can do this in a lot of different ways. So typos are the main thing you should probably fix. It's probably one of the main things that happens in your content in terms of errors. And you can just use a spell checking tool right in Google Drive. You can use Grammarly, which is a really good tool, or Hemingway Editor. And once you get those out of the way, you can then go move on to grammar and punctuation. So spelling errors are pretty easy to spot if you know what to look for. It's just simply finding the words that aren't spelled correctly. But grammar and punctuation can be a bit more complex, and you need to develop an eye for it, because it's all about the proper usage of like syntax and rules and more complex things. But instead, what I recommend you do, once again, just use Grammarly or Hemingway app, something to just completely automate it. But some common errors you might look for would be misusing apostrophes, like it or it is rather, not using commas after introductory phrases, run-on sentences, misusing words like affect versus effect, or using an n dash versus an m dash. It's all these tiny little things. If you aren't the best linguist when it comes to this stuff, just use a tool like Grammarly. It'll definitely help you out. And then also readability is a huge part of high quality writing, like I mentioned before with SEO and lead gen. So if you want to really make a good piece of content, it has to be readable. And one of the first ways to do that is just break apart your sentences and paragraphs. So it depends on the type of material you are writing as well. You wouldn't do this maybe in something more academic like a white paper, but if it's a blog post, it's really good to break apart those sentences into much shorter ones, because it makes it much easier on the eyes. And those big blocks of text tend to be like very intimidating. So you can get around this just by shortening everything up. And then also there's something called logical flow. So you want to make sure that all the points you make, small and big, make sense in the order they're in the content. So for example, this was a blog post on how to use a website builder, and they start by choosing the right website builder, signing up for a plan, choosing a domain, picking a template, so on. But it wouldn't make sense if they instantly jumped into here's how you design a website, here's how you preview it, and here's how you publish it, right? It wouldn't make sense. People are going to be wondering, how do you actually get this thing? How do you buy it? And that's why it makes sense when it's ordered in this specific way. So when you're writing content, whether it's before or after when you're editing it, just make sure you audit all the major points, all the headings, and if they actually make sense in the logical flow, and if the reader would be thinking and asking about those things when they're reading it, and then just reorder it with that in mind. So besides shorter sentences and logically ordering your information, how you actually transition between the content is really important too, because it just makes it more smooth and it helps push the reader from the start to the beginning without any problems, because the more obstacles there are, the more often they're probably going to end up leaving. So it's actually just as simple as using transitionary words. So for example, if you're adding on to an idea, normally I like to say furthermore, besides, finally, in addition to, and then you would elaborate on that extra idea. If you're comparing points, especially in like an article where you're comparing two tools, let's say, you can say in contrast to, nevertheless, on the contrary. If you're proving a point, you can say indeed, since, in any case, evidently, and then elaborate on that point. And once again, use lots of data. If you're showing the exception to something, you might say, however, despite this, so-and-so. And then if you're showing examples, I really like to say, for instance, for illustration, or for example, and then show what I'm talking about. Now, also a big thing is technical jargon. So these are just advanced terms when you're writing about a particular subject, and it's okay to use technical jargon, but just make sure that you go easy on it, or if anything, that you explain it afterwards. So anyone that doesn't know that technical jargon doesn't look like the meme there on the right, and they actually understand what you're speaking about. And then another thing you want to keep consistent when you're editing is the reading and vocab level. So right now, I believe in the United States, the average reading level is roughly 7th grade. So if you were to, let's say, write at a 7th grade level, and then you switch it to something really complex that only a Harvard professor would understand, it's going to really confuse the readers. So you want to keep it consistent all the way through. And it's actually really easy to do with something like HemingwayApp.com or Hemingway Editor, as I mentioned. Pretty much you paste in any content, and in the top right, it will tell you the reading level that you're writing at. It also tells you grammar errors, active voice versus passive voice, things like that. So it's an all-around great tool, but I'd highly recommend it just for grading the reading level and then making sure that's consistent all through your content. And then last but not least, after you've written the content, you've edited it, you don't want to publish it just yet. You do want to proofread it as well. And proofreading is just giving it one final look through, because even myself, I've found when I've edited content and I go through it again, sometimes there's still errors. You'd be really surprised. So what I want you to do is when you are done editing, go through and make sure, once again, the grammar and punctuation is good. The tone of voice is consistent. The points are all logically ordered in a very nice way. The content is structured with all the formatting and headers I was talking about, that all the data and images you use are correctly sourced, that your on-page SEO is really good with everything you learned today, and once again, you integrate those lead magnets. But that pretty much sums up the presentation. I really appreciate you guys watching and being here. If you want some more free resources on content writing and things of that nature, you can head over to my personal website. I also do consultations and content writing services if you need that to grow. But once again, thank you for contributing today, coming through, and I believe Nicole wants to move on to some Q&A if anyone has questions.
Absolutely, yes. And thank you so much, Carmen. This was so informative and
My
so
pleasure.
meat.
I tried to make it super practical, yeah.
It's not fluff. This is actual. We're gonna have to chew on this for some good times for sure. Now, if anybody has any questions, feel free to write them in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself. Let's just try to do this one at a time to ask your questions. So please feel free. I know there's a lot to chew on, but if you want to unmute yourself, go right ahead, or write in the chat and I'll read it out to Carmen, no problem. Some of the comments we're having here is, have lots of notes, informative, easily understood. So you've touched a lot of people here, Carmen.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. So does anybody have any, oh, wait, here. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, somebody's asking thoughts on TikTok.
On TikTok, it can be really good for marketing right now. It isn't written content per se, but it can easily go viral. And they do have a very good analytics system now. So if you are doing it for business, you can get a lot of insights into how certain content is performing and then double down on what's working and remove what isn't. So I think TikTok has some potential, especially if you're in maybe like a health niche or something that is more visual based.
Okay. Yeah, okay, good. You answered the second part of that question, which was appropriate for business or just teenagers dancing.
Probably both.
Yes, it is. It has transitioned from teenagers dancing to useful for business.
Hmm.
You just have to be able to speak the language, which
Yeah, if
is,
your demographic is on your target audience, I don't see why not.
yep. Somebody's asking me if the recording will be shared later. Yes, I will gladly send the recording later, but it will also be on Spark's YouTube page. So if you want to, you know, look us up, subscribe to it, that would be great. This webinar, as well as those that we've had up until now and those that will be coming, will be on there. Not to deter anybody from coming live and personal, but it is there for you to view and share for sure. Does anybody else have any other questions? There was so much.
Well, I think actually Evan asked a question. He said, how long do you anticipate it to start seeing results with the content writing strategies? So it depends on which one exactly, but for most part, you can actually deploy all these today. When it comes to SEO, that stuff takes a bit longer, but the lead generation, if you're developing lead magnets and you're getting a good funnel, that's something you start benefiting from right away.
Okay, there you go. I took pictures of all your slides. I'm looking to see.
Awesome. I can share it with everybody as well.
Okay, that would be great. But instead of writing notes, I love this new technology concept where I can take pictures and then go back and say, oh yeah, this is great. So you've been writing content for 8 years, you said?
Yeah, it's been about 8 years now.
Okay, so we have a question here, how to balance the extensive content in a depth and people's focus, less effectiveness on a lengthy article.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would say it goes back to the formatting. So if you're writing really long content, people definitely aren't, the average person is only reading about 20%, as I covered. But if you do format it correctly with all the headers, the subheaders, you have a really good writing style, most people will actually read your content. I know even on my personal website, most people are reading my content and they're on the page for about 5 to 10 minutes long. So if you do format it correctly, people will stay on the page. But you just do want to be ready with the good formatting, just in case they don't. You want to be able to help them skim through it if they do want to do that. But if you write really good formatted content, a lot of people will read all the way through.
Okay. Okay, anybody else? We do have a couple more minutes. So, oh, here we go. Which one is more effective for marketing between Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram?
That's good. Yeah, they all have so much potential. I would say Instagram and Pinterest, those are really good if you're in fashion, health, or beauty because they're visual based. Pinterest is also really good for if you're doing infographics because it's pretty much all graphic based on there. But Facebook's really good for trying to build a community because you make your own page and then invite people to that. So honestly, I would say that you want to use all three, and then testing is the way to go. If you see the most engagement on Facebook, let's say, then double down on that and spend your most time and money there. But it's good to have all your social platforms in order, but then just put the most focus in what's actually delivering the biggest return. But out of all those three, I'd probably say Facebook has the greatest potential right now.
Okay. It's interesting for you to say Facebook, and you're not the only person I've heard say that. Meanwhile, the conversations that I have with people in their 20s are like, Facebook is dying. I'm like, well, not
Oh,
so.
yeah, maybe like socially, like the actual network itself, but for business, I think Facebook's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Any advice on writing an article on LinkedIn? That's a great question.
Yeah, that's good too. So I'd say a lot of what I covered today still applies because they allow you to edit it for SEO. You can add images and everything. But you do have to remember that you're speaking to a very specific audience, which is mostly B2B professionals and marketers on LinkedIn. So just make sure that you're tailoring the content maybe to be a bit more professional. You wouldn't want to have as casual as a writing style on LinkedIn. So just know that you're writing to that crowd.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Oh, here we go. What's your insight on the trend of media market print, digital, social media, short videos?
I'll say so. Right now, digital is just about, I think it's surpassed physical, but physical and print stuff still has so much potential. You can look into the data and the performance of it. I think that it's still highly underrated. If you look at magazines, trade magazines, things like that, they do really, really well. So it's always good to have a blend with your content. It's really good to have something like the written content, the physical content like a magazine or a book or a brochure. And then also it's good to have something like audio or video mixed in there. So once again, having that blend is really good, but I think they all have equal potential. Short videos, those are really good for like Facebook and Instagram. They are pretty trendy right now. And then social media in general, you definitely want to be active on, at least sharing the content on there.
Okay. Okay. Last call for questions. Okay, well, it looks like all the questions are done at this point. Thank you again, everybody, so much for coming today and attending. As I said, this will be posted on our YouTube channel, and I will also see about sending it to you. We will have our next webinar next week. We're still working on the details of what it will be on. So I can't tell you what the content of that will be, but keep an eye out on our Facebook and plan on registering for that as well. Thank you, Carmen, so much for the
my pleasure.
information. It was, yeah, like I said, it was very informative and definitely meat to chew on. So thank you, everybody. Whoops, hit my computer. Have a great day.
No problem. Yeah. Bye-bye, everybody.
We'll see you. Bye.